I've said before that clarity in your writing is the most important aspect of prose. When you write and what you put down on the page, it needs to first and foremost always be clear. Your writing needs to say what you want it to say. And then from there, you can build off the skill of learning to have your writing say multiple things. The idea of writing by implication. The idea that you can write something and have it say one thing on the page but mean something completely different as well. Or have the idea of what you're trying to say kind of subtly expressed. So that way the reader, they read it, they pick up on the subtext of what you're trying to put down. And when it comes to projects, I find that clarity in what you're trying to do is also the most important thing. And as I wrap this up, I'm happy to see that at least this project has come across as clear as what I tried to envision it. It's become as close to an accurate representation of the story I wanted to tell as I could probably put down at my level right now. And ultimately that's what we want, right? Ultimately that's what we all sort of seek in this process, is a story that we see on the page that matches the vision that we had in our head when we first came up with it. Because we grew up in the age of film, I think, in television, obviously, I think we tend to view a lot of our works, at least I do, in terms of what it would look like if a movie was made, right? I always try to think, if this was made into a film, how would it look? And that's often how these scenes tend to play out in my head. That's often how I tend to envision my work. I see it first in my head as sort of like almost like a film or a television scene, and then I try to create it on the page. And so I think for writing, you need to try and maintain that. You need to try and get your work as close to the vision that you have in your head as you can, but also go and understanding that at a certain skill level, you're not going to be able to pull that off. It's, the writer I was, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago could not have done what I've done today. The story would not look the same. It would not read the same. It would not create the same picture in someone's mind that hopefully it does now. It's simply a matter of mechanics. It's simply a matter of time and of skill level. And if you're going to be, someone who wants to improve their writing, that's ultimately what you're trying to do. That's ultimately, I think, the end goal is to get your work to be as clear in the reader's mind as is in yours. And it feels good to be on the other side of that. It feels exciting to look back at my work now and sort of see how close it's become. It's not perfect. It's by no means does it perfectly envision what I see in my head. There are things I'm sure when someone else reads my work, they're not gonna envision exactly the same thing. How could they, right? It's impossible to get that specific, but it's impressive to see that. It's impressive for me to look back at my work, to see it now and realize how close it reads to how much I had in my head originally, and how close these scenes are. And it's important to take these moments in. If you are someone who is going through this writing process, take in these moments. It's not conceited, it's not arrogant to take moments to appreciate that, because ultimately that may be the only victory you get. The writing process is very difficult. The publishing process is even more difficult. And that might be the only victory you have. Just seeing that you created work that was in your head. Excuse me. Seeing a work that was in your head and seeing how close it was to what you envisioned. That could be your victory. Seeing your skill level improve, that might be your only victory as well. Publishing is not guaranteed. And if you don't have that, what else do you have, right? What else is there for a victory for you to have? So take that in. Take in the small victories like that. Take in the small personal achievements. There aren't many in this process, and the more that you can take in, the more that you can appreciate of it, I think the more inspiration you'll have to go back into your next project. Most people don't get rejected every single time and come back with that sort of fire of wanting to prove the doubters wrong. The people that sort of approach the writing process where they get rejected and they go to their next book and they start writing, they're often not writing to prove the doubters wrong. They're not writing to show up the agents that rejected them. I think certainly a few are. I've had those moments too. But that motivation dies. That sort of anger, that writing with that sort of passion and with that anger and with that desire to simply, prove the naysayers wrong, it goes away. It won't sustain you. That type of motivation does not sustain people over the long term. What sustains you over the long term is taking the small pleasures and the small joys in the process. That's what can sustain you. That's what can make someone write for 20 years. You know what I mean? Without getting published and still come back to the page. That's what can get a hobbyist to return to the page. That's what can get someone who has a growth mindset. That's what gets you back to it. It's not so much proving the guy wrong. It's doing it because you're taking the joy out of the small things that you found and seeing the clarity of your writing and how clear it's become to the vision that you had. That's one of those motivations. That's one of those small victories to take in. And so I'll be back tomorrow, getting closer to the end here, getting much closer. Tomorrow, though, I'm throwing up a nice video. It'll be a 2-part series on outlining, which is going to be awesome. So that's the lesson for this month is outlining. So I will be back tomorrow, though. Until then, stay safe.